Turkey has taken on a pioneering role. Since the outset of the war, Russia and Ukraine have trusted President Erdoğan, and he has stepped in to solve the grain crisis. Putin and Zelensky um, have had discussions with Erdoğan many times, maybe exporting of grains from Black Sea. Steps were taken in this regard, and efforts have paid off. The grain crisis has had an impact on the entire world, and a discussion table was set in Turkey. Turkey, Ukraine, and Russian representatives have come together. We have agreed on a text today, and the entire world is now saved from the danger of hunger. On the 21st of July, the world has looked into Turkey, and an MOU has been signed. President Erdoğan and United Nations Secretary General Guterres have attended the meeting, and signatures have been affixed to fix the crisis, global food crisis, and the solution of that. This has been an initiative to play a significant role, and we have the deserved pride for this. And Guterres has also thanked Erdoğan for his efforts. There is a beacon for Black Sea, and the world needs it more than um, all other times in history. It was thanks to your persistent attitude that the crisis has been solved. United Nations Secretary General Guterres has also emphasized that there is a beacon of hope for Black Sea, and he also thanked esteemed Erdoğan, and he thanked in Turkish. So the endeavors and efforts of Turkey was quite important. And if you allow me, I'd like to ask the first question to you, esteemed President. What kind of a process was really conducted in the grain crisis? How did you come to the stage of signing a deal, and what kind of a process will be followed so that grain will be exported from Black Sea? Because this is a global food crisis to be solved. And I'd like to add on to my question, the signatures that were affixed in Istanbul, will there be any possibility of a ceasefire between the two countries? Will there be any new efforts for peace building in the coming period?
First things first, I wish everyone a good evening. I likewise would like to wish a very good evening to all my citizens watching us. Yes, of course, about this, for a long time, uninterruptedly, we had many contacts and talks. Consequently, about the safe export of the Ukrainian grain to the rest of the world, we ensured the signing of an agreement in Istanbul. When the plan is put to practice, the impacts of the global food crisis, which has been impacting the whole world, will start lightening, if you will. And in press, we saw that there were some headlines that said the prices fell by 3% or 5%, and this will be how it will unfold in the future. Of course, the pressure on the developing countries will be relieved, and some scarcities, possible scarcities, will be thwarted. These are some consequences we hope to see. This is a contribution we have made, and also shows the important role that Turkey can play in international matters. One more time, this showed it. The operational dimension of the plan will hopefully be put to practice in Istanbul with Ukraine, from Ukraine, Russia, and the UN officials will be here. The ships destined to Ukraine and returning from Ukraine will be steered and guided in their navigation. The negotiations that were held took place on very sensitive grounds and in an environment where the war is ongoing. The otherwise would have not been thought of course. And my Minister of Foreign Affairs and Defense Minister were also in close contact with their counterparts, and I was in close communication with my counterparts. And of course, we cannot put aside the contributions of the Secretary General of the UN. The process is very sensitive, and the fact that the strike took place in Odessa port shows how the process, in and out of itself, is very sensitive. Of course, we wouldn't want to see that, but unfortunately, this took place. And there are some similar examples in the world. Everyone is to act as we expect, in line with the responsibilities they are to shoulder. And we want all actions that would go against the agreement signed be avoided. By the way, we have a busy traffic, and the fact that such a strike took place upsets us, and a failure will be against all of us. We would like to remind we are determined to put this agreement into practice with all its elements therein. This is our priority, and our priority from the beginning of the war was to ensure ceasefire and peace building that is fair and lasting. This is our understanding, and I hope that we will also achieve that.
Well, NATO summit, well, especially our questions are related with Sweden and Finland joining NATO. And Turkey has been a key country in this. And those countries have basically harbored terrorists for years, and propagandas have been conducted as allowed by the countries. Turkey has had demands for extradition, and they haven't been addressed at the moment. And after the signature, though, the developments have been monitored closely by you. And our colleagues have asked about the terrorist organization PKK in Sweden, and let's watch it together. Between Turkey and Sweden, problems have taken place in this area, but I hope that the situation is solved as soon as possible. Well, demonstrations have sabotaged the membership process, and it's going to sabotage it again. I'm aware of that. So extraditions, if these people have to be extradited, they have to be extradited. If Erdoğan wants them, he can take them all. If they've been involved in terrorist activities, they should be extradited to Turkey. Had the same situation taken place in Turkey, Sweden would have asked for the same thing, and I think it's good that extradition can take place. This, if this is regarded as a terrorist organization, their activities should be banned. If they are basically an entity that is considered a terrorist organization, these people should be extradited to Turkey. Swedish national security should be a priority, and this should be the first perspective that needs to be adopted. The situation in Sweden is critical because of the war in Ukraine. And I am calling on to those countries that provide direct support to terrorist organizations. You are harboring snakes in your country, and they can attack you anytime. We are at the Çankaya Palace, and we are proceeding. Mehmet Ali, maybe we can start with you. Well, I'd like to ask about NATO summit in Madrid. An important summit was held in Madrid, and you've had the chance to have one-on-one discussions, and delegations have come together, and you've also expressed your opinion on Sweden and Finland joining NATO. And terror has been an area that you've placed great emphasis on. You have demonstrated videos to depict the activities of these terrorist organizations. And from your perspective, what have been the most important outcomes of the summit in Madrid?
I would like to answer this question by underlining, in particular, PKK, PYD, and YPG, and FETÖ. These shall not be supported, and this is our red line, as we reminded them there. And at NATO, in a memorandum of understanding where there was a reference, this was confirmed. And we said nobody should expect us to make compromises about that. This is the most important outcome of the summit. So the fact that these terror groups made into the records of NATO is the most successful part of the NATO summit. FETÖ or PKK before were not included as terror groups, terrorist organizations, in documents or records of NATO-like international organizations. And about that, of course, we have concrete expectations from Sweden and Finland. And we saw in the video before on the streets of Sweden, under the supervision of police, they are demonstrating, walking. They have been holding their rags in their hands and the posters of their so-called leaders in their hands. This is how they are parading. But also the common sense of the Swedish citizens is known. If Turkey wants, if Erdoğan wants, then these people are terrorists and they should be extradited. This is what is necessitated. And also, certain structures there also should be shut down. This is what we also demanded. Propaganda and demonstrations of terror groups, these should be prevented. Interrogations should be initiated against these people. This goes the same for properties. In fight against terrorism, what is asked from us? If there are some people involved in terms of providing capital or money, then their money should be confiscated and returned, and these people should be extradited. This is what they also ask of us. We also have some expectations for the freezing of properties, and this goes the same for extradition. And they are in contact with our relevant authorities, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and at the joint mechanism meetings to end terrorism, to end the support to terrorism. All steps to be taken will be elaborated. I also should underline one thing. Nobody should expect a compromise from Turkey about this. We held our talks and we came back, but right after that, the next day, those terrorists were again demonstrating on the streets of Stockholm. This goes the same for Finland. They were demonstrating. So Sweden is way far from taking a concrete action, a step ahead. Terror propaganda included. As long as they do not prevent these members of terrorist groups to act, then they should not expect the same behavior from us.
Let's continue with Mr. Müderrisoğlu. I'd like to contribute to these remarks. There is a significant gain on the side of NATO, but what kind of a calendar awaits us at the moment. Well, what will happen and what will not happen if the commitments are not delivered on? You've mentioned that. And for the approval of the two countries' applications, Turkey has a heavier hand here. So what kind of a calendar awaits us, though? For Sweden and Finland, we have fulfilled these kinds of requirements, they could say, for example. But what about the process that can be followed in a more tangible fashion? Because these countries, they know what will happen, but do they have a perspective about what will not happen?
Mr. Mudarisoglu, this is not an easy job as some assume. For example, it took 11 years. So it is not happening all of a sudden and just like that. A- Admitting some into NATO all of a sudden is not how it works. This is what we expressed to our colleagues, and this is how the process is ongoing. So the first stage in Madrid, what was it? What was in Madrid indeed was an invitation, not an approval. And what will be the outcome of this invitation? Then the actions will denominate. If these terrorists can walk on your streets under protection, then we are following all these. We have our intelligence there, we have everything, and we follow very closely what happens where. And the issue is not only about Sweden or Finland. I will be naming the names. Unfortunately, this goes the same for Germany, for France, for the UK, for Italy. Almost in all Scandinavian countries, this is the same.
Well, other NATO countries are doing it.
They do not need to explain. I already myself did. I said all of these to them, to my counterparts, during our talks at the Leaders Summit. With Emmanuel, I asked, what will you do? Will you continue as such? And they were laughing. And I said, if this does not continue as it is supposed to, then we have our parliament, and our parliament will not think positively about that.
You've had discussions with leaders and you pointed attention to that, and Turkey is like a central country when it comes to foreign politics. You've had many conversations on the phone with many leaders, and we have compiled a footage, a video for this, and let's watch it first, and then we'll proceed with our questions. President Erdogan's diplomacy agenda is ongoing. President Erdogan is having a meeting at Beştepe with Guterres. Esteemed Erdogan has been hosted by Saudi Arabian leader. Erdogan is being hosted. Esteemed Erdogan is now having talks with Qatari Emir. Azerbaijan counterpart of Erdogan was received by him. An official ceremony is taking place. Recep Tayyip Erdogan went to United Arab Emirates. Erdogan held a meeting with Colombian leaders. Erdogan is joining Technofest in Baku. Erdogan is hosting Mr. Sharif from Pakistan. Erdogan is hosting Nicolas Maduro. Prince has been received by President Erdogan. Swedish and Finnish leaders have been meeting with President Erdogan. Joe Biden and Erdogan started their meetings. Erdogan has come together with Macron. Erdogan met with Boris Johnson during the NATO summit. Erdogan held a meeting with Scholz. The world is watching the NATO summit that is being held in Madrid. Recep Tayyip Erdogan is hosting Maria Draga in an official ceremony. Erdoğan is having a meeting with Hassan Sheikh Mahmoud. Turkey, Iran, and Russia leaders are coming together in a tripartite summit. Erdoğan is hosting Vladimir Putin. In terms of diplomatic dimension, a historic day is taking place. As seen, Turkey has been a central country in diplomacy. Well, this has been very heavy traffic for diplomacy, and this has been only the past 4 months. Many meetings have taken place, and you've also paid visits. And one of the latest visits was in Iran, and I think Nuriye Çakmakçelik was with you, and she is going to pose the question. During the Astana process, a summit was organized, and you've had the chance to meet with the leaders in a tripartite fashion, and you also had bilateral meetings as well with Putin and the leader of Iran, and they've been quite important summits. And German Minister of Foreign Affairs made a comment, and they said this is a challenge. This photo is a challenge, they said. So could you please describe the importance of this tripartite summit and its implications in the world?
Yes, of course. Turkey-Iran 7th High-Level Cooperation Council, and then followingly, the 7th Summit in Astana format took place, and we were in Iran on July the 19th. With our Iranian counterpart, we had a chance to address our relations in all dimensions. From investment to social security, we addressed a large scale of issues, and we signed 8 different documents with Iran. And we, during our talks, also addressed our bilateral trade volume. During Ahmadinejad's term, we back then had put a target to bring it up to $30 billion in volume. However, because of COVID and whatsoever, this fell, and the most recent figure is $7.5 billion. However, this figure of 7.5 billion does not fit to Turkey-Iran relations. So, yet again, we need to exert efforts to bring it back again to 30 billion. Are we in terms? And Mr. Raisi said, yes, we are in terms, and we will work and we will deal with that. And we have advantages to deal with that. What are those advantages? We are procuring oil from Iran. This goes the same for natural gas, so we will be increasing figures in those areas. Once we do that, we will achieve this figure of 30 billion. There will be no problem about that. And very rapidly now, probably, yes, we are now finalizing the second quarter of this year, and we have achieved the figure of 8 billion, and we can increase this much more. The talks we had were very sincere. We said we need to take these steps ahead. We believe that this is necessary, and by way of signing 8 agreements, the high level strategic council meeting was successfully finalized with the signing of these documents. And on the other hand, we had our talks with Mr. Putin. And the talks we had with Mr. Putin was much different because right now, when it comes to the issue about Putin and Zelensky, we are playing a very crucial role because we do not consider anyone as a foe. We consider both parties as our friends. And our perspective this way also brings about this sincere attitude from both parties alike. And Mr. Putin, against Mr. Putin, the perspective of the West is not a perspective that would fit to politicians. If you take a look at him from that perspective, he will take a look back at you from the same perspective. However, during our talks, we addressed all matters relevant to both of our countries sincerely, and the undesired conditions caused by the war and about some other specific issues. Yes, there are, of course, some issues we're not in terms about. But about S-400s, we did not share the perspective, the opinion of the whole world. On the contrary, we did what we believed in, and our bilateral relations with Russia are to continue on mutual benefits, and also we need to develop the areas where we have a potential within the framework of Astana process with Mr. Putin and with Mr. Raisi. We addressed in greater detail about the issues related with Syria, the process, the continuation of the coordination we have, I believe, are very important for the resolution of problems. And fight against terror was among the top matters of our agenda, not even the top among the top, I should. It was the priority matter in our agenda. Therefore, about Syria, both Russia and Iran need to have a perspective, especially in the north, in the south, and also the east of Euphrates. We know the PKK YPG continue with their attacks against our powers, and during our talks, I shared my concerns with Mr. Putin and Mr. Raisi.
And there is a matter related with Greece at the moment. There are some representatives there, authorities there. They're basically talking about Turkey all the time. They are complaining about Turkey. They are providing arms to islands. And as you pointed out, there is a number of American bases on the islands. What does Greece want to do here? What does it want to achieve, and how do you evaluate that?
Right now, of course, about 1.5 months ago, I said, let's have a meal together. And at Vahdettin mentioned with Mr. Mitsotakis, we had a meal. And I said to him, we should not allow a third country or third parties come in between us. In other words, whatever we are going to do, we should do it directly and even establish a direct line and have our talks directly. But then a few weeks later, 3 weeks later, he visited the US, and in his speech at the Congress, he made references to us, made criticism, and said a lot against us. And then he went to Davos, and there again he did certain similar things. But we are Turkey. We are not a tribal state. And then he said, Turkey did this, Turkey did that, and so on. So much so that you are a politician, so am I, and you should know one thing very well. Should you take a negative step against Turkey, my first job, as I am a politician, is to have strong material I can explain to my people. Therefore, the FS exercise made them much crazy. And after the FS exercise, military exercise, they did some drills and exercises on their own. And now at the high level cooperation council meetings, I said that it is not of issue for me to talk to Mitsotakis any longer. And I said Greece had to end its insincere attitude. We very frankly made that decision, spoke it out, and my foreign minister and defense minister will end the talks. 5 plus 4, totally 9 US bases are located in Greece.
One of them has been opened recently.
5 of them were already there, and they opened the most recent 4. And they deny it. And now they have efforts to place them on islands. And they claim that these bases have been established against Russia. But who are you deceiving, really? You have neither the power nor the strength to do that against Russia. Not even the US can do that. If you are talking about bases, we have our Incirlik military base. We show so much of goodwill, and now you go ahead and do such weird things on the islands. And Greece, about our security needs, also tries to prevent us from buying aircrafts to the US or to France or to some other different countries. To them, they say, do not sell them to Turkey. Do not give those products to Turkey. They might or not. It doesn't matter. With our attitude and everything, we are preserving our stance.
Well, you've also mentioned the paragraph on Greece. It is quite contrary to Lausanne when it comes to providing arms to islands. And do you think that message has been received by Greece?
I assume that they have drawn the necessary lesson from that. These activities by Greece that are ongoing against good neighborly relations is not only against this current situation, but also the Paris and Lausanne treaties. So when this is the case, then what are we supposed to do? Sit on our hands and let Greece do whatever they can? No. When the time is due, we will do whatever necessary. And the sovereignty of these islands, if they are under non-official military status, Mitsotakis does not know that these islands were given to them under those status conditions.
Kaplan, you can proceed. And I have a question about Greece as well, esteemed President. The United States of America, and it has offered a Greece-related condition about sales of F-16s. How do you evaluate that?
This one is weird as well. And the Chief of General Staff made a statement. Such conditions can never be put to use. And in our Madrid talks, we had very positive talks. And during our meetings, we had exchanged opinions about this specific matter as well as our regional issues. And he was positive on his way back in the statements he made. But I don't know where this came. The issues regarding Greece came to agenda. And this attitude about a talks in Madrid, I believe, was positive. But of course, the more the US administration made their support visible publicly, some circles in the Congress also had made some interventions to prevent the procedures as regards F-16s. We can see the 2023 National Defense Act of the U.S. At the Representatives House on July the 14th. They made an offer for a proposal for change for the procurement of F-16s pertaining to certain conditions. The process is still ongoing, and it's not fully clear. Therefore, we need to follow the procedure closely and see what would be the outcomes possibly. I believe the talks will prove to be fruitful, positive, because during our Madrid talks, from his own party, from the Democrats, he said there are some friends who do not have positive thoughts. And I said, all right, Republicans, then we should make a work, come up with a work about Republicans, and as Republicans and Democrats, uh, together they can come up with a positive proposal, I said, and we have some talks, we have some
Well,
actions, we will.
We've been talking about extraordinary traffic at NATO, and when we look at some of the actions Turkey has taken, we have realized that Turkey has turned a new page when it comes to relations with UAE, Saudi Arabia, and Israel. And there is a lower profile diplomatic relationship with Egypt at the moment. But what kind of steps will be taken for the coming period?
And of course, all of these mutual visits we had in a period of almost a year with the UAE and Egypt, we have started a new era for our relations. For both countries, with Saudi Arabia and the UAE, both countries' authorities are continuing to work. With the UAE, we established a joint investment fund, and also talks are ongoing as regards a much more comprehensive scale of process, and also to address the problems of our businessmen. Uh, there has been a lot of efforts exerted by the Saudi administration, and they are inviting our contractors to take part in operations. And also boycott and similar like actions are almost coming to an end, and the Turkish schools are opening. And more importantly, uh, recently we are developing, improving our relations with Israel and our talks with Mr. Herzog. This process started with our positive talks. After 15 years from Israel, we had the first official visit at the presidential level to our country from Israel. And also the process about Egypt, its infrastructure, if you will, is ongoing. All talks and diplomacy, these are all ongoing. So at high levels, it is the case. As long as we understand one another, as long as we, in a controlled manner, continue following our perspectives, our attitudes, then everything is possible. The people of Egypt, for example, they're Muslim people. They're our brothers and sisters, and Muslims will not think at odds about each other. As long as we continue with a process that will not upset one party, it will do it.
Well, we've talked about relations with different countries. My question is about relations with Armenia. Well, for the first time in a while, a high-level bilateral talk has taken place with Armenian Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan. And do you think this will gain a new dimension in the days to come?
You have pointed a very interesting issue with Prime Minister Pashinyan. We exchanged our congratulations in a phone conversation within the framework of the religious holidays of both countries. Yes, the normalization process in between our country and Armenia was what we addressed as well during our conversation. And what was our red line all the way from the beginning? It was Azerbaijan. And now, if the Azerbaijan issue is on track, we said we would open our doors for Prime Minister Pashinyan about regional peace and cooperation. He shares our opinions, and we were very pleased to hear that from him. But of course, beyond all, we expect them to take tangible steps ahead. About normalization, we are fully determined, and for full normalization and good neighborly relations, we have our goals. This is our goal. For example, in Turkey, we have more than 100,000 Armenians. We have our own Armenian citizens and also Armenians that are non citizens of our country. This shows our perspective, our behavior. Therefore, in coordination with Azerbaijan, we continue with this approach with Armenia, and we had said that in the beginning, and we will continue saying the same thing after this.
We'd like to proceed with the fight against terrorism because this is an area that Turkey has been quite successful, both in and outside the country. And when it comes to Turkey's determination, we'll have some questions. I'll ask a question from recent history and 2019 for the south, for the west and for the east side of Euphrates. Some protocols have been signed with the states. Will the terrorist elements being withdrawn from these areas and the terrorist organizations being deprived of their arms? And there are quite clear commitments. And very recently, on the north of Iraq, an attack was orchestrated against civilians, and it was somehow linked with Turkey to add more flames to the situation. Both great countries, America and Russia, not necessarily delivering on their promises, and they give the message that an operation could be conducted, but at the same time, this treacherous attack was conducted. So the current situation in Syria and Turkey's position vis-à-vis the situation, well, could you please evaluate the situation within the framework of your talks with your counterparts?
Firstly, PKK, YPG, PYD. A similar act of terror, a usual one, by these terror groups, one more time took place. We're familiar with such acts, and we said this to the US. We explained to them this is what it is, and we should not fall to traps. This is what we said to our brothers and sisters in the east of Iraq. And we said, be cautious about the statements you make. Turkey cannot be anyhow in an act with such groups or whatsoever. This is not possible. So this was one of the usual acts of these terror groups. So what mattered was to deteriorate the positive developments taking place in between Turkey and Iraq. And many Iraqi brothers and sisters who had common sense made good statements. But unfortunately, some of them made statements that stated the otherwise. One of them was shared with me tonight. This was about the Islamic Games to take place in Konya province. They made a statement that Iraq wasn't going to participate. This upset me. Iraq should not take such a step, and I said to our friends, have talks and maybe they can revise that statement because we would like to see Iraq in those games and also the civilians who lost their lives. About all those who lost their lives, I would like to convey my condolences to their families and to the whole country. And we once again saw the truth about PKK. Yes, the east of the Euphrates is still challenging.
Very true.
And there, unfortunately, the US has very significant negative approaches. As a matter of fact, I said that in the Madrid talks. Likewise, in Tehran, I stressed that US should withdraw from the east of Iraq because the terror groups take their power, all their power, from that location. Tel Rafat, thousands and thousands of trucks full of ammunition and weapons. These are being piled there. U.S. continues with that. We said that to Trump as well, to Biden. But about that, still a positive step hasn't been taken. But we hope that positive action will be taken and we will have the chance to repair the negative developments in Tel Rifat and in the region. We will not touch anyone who does not touch us.
There has been an interesting development in this matter. The National Intelligence Service has neutralized a militant from YPG, and um, and the US base that provides support to them, they have um, published a message.
This is not the first of its kind. Before, the US did similar things many times, and all those trained by the US. As you know, many times their trainers visited those terror camps and trained those people. And those training activities are unfortunately still ongoing. And they issued a message of condolences about this terrorist. And if you take a look at who that is, it's really interesting. A person who was engaged in acts of terror and also is a figure who tried to recruit girls for a terror group. And this will be bearing a consequence for the US falling into the trap that it is indeed digging for itself if they do cooperate with such a terror group. If we will have a chance to have another talk with Mr. Biden, we will be presenting all these to them. Despite all our interventions, the cooperation of the U.S. with PKK and YPG is continuing. In fight against Daesh, the U.S. sees YPG as an ally, but PYD as an ally. But what is the difference in between them and PKK? They forget the fact that Turkey is a member of NATO, and this goes the same for the Turkish opposition. We cannot ignore these things. And about our potential operation in the north of Syria, the U.S. said that they're against this idea and this would cause the instability and harm the fight against Daesh and lead to humanitarian repercussions. But while saying that, they're not talking about the harm they are to sustain, they are to give and cause to a NATO ally when they are cooperating with a terror group. We are one of the 5 most important members of NATO, and you are harming us. So fighting against a terror group is not possible through another terror group. We should know that very well.
One of the most important topic in Turkey is the refugee crisis, and this is something that you addressed in the summit in Tehran. So Turkey creating a safe corridor and ensuring the security of the refugees there. But after a likely fifth operation, how will Syrians go back home? How will the process be handled?
Yes, of course. About the content of such an operation. I wouldn't want to see it as a matter of our agenda tonight. I wouldn't want to go into. However, firstly, in the first stage, we have a plan to construct 250,000 brick houses. We do it with AFAD, the Emergency and Disaster Management Authority of Turkey, because it's neither humanitarian nor Islamic to let these people live in such conditions, in tents. And we said we should construct homes for these people, construct those houses of bricks, and with the participation of our NGOs, about 100,000 residential units have been fully constructed. And we will now go into the stage of a new work. We will not only have a single story unit, but also units with two floors, a ground floor and one on top of it. And this way, the refugees will be repatriated, will be able to go back home with their own wish voluntarily. And if we can achieve that, it will go up to 1 million. So far, we haven't seen much support from the international community, but if you ask them, they have supported.
National Intelligence Service has conducted successful operations against the so-called senior personalities from PKK and YPG. For some of them have been found alive and brought back to Turkey. And also there have been operations against those FETÖ members as well. And will we hear new names that you can share with us at the moment?
And if I do disclose these names from here, if I do disclose, will the intelligence agency find these people? So what matters, and when we say one night we can come all of a sudden, is about that. The intelligence agency is following all these people and names with their operations, and then finish them with right to the point acts, and the National Intelligence Agency will continue their actions.
If you allow us, we'd like to proceed with economy, but this is a period during which global inflation has become a widespread problem. Many countries like the UK have witnessed high inflation at the moment. So let's see the recent global economic outlook in those countries, and then we'll proceed with our questions on economy. So countries have seen record levels of inflation. So the coronavirus pandemic, followed by the impact of the war between Russia and Ukraine, the world's strongest countries are grappling with economic crisis. The US has seen the record levels of the past 41 years in inflation. So record inflation levels are facing the states, and the latest data shows that the situation is going to get even worse. From food to fuel, healthcare services, and food prices, they have increased significantly, and this has resulted in a very difficult situation. Unemployment benefit applications have also seen record
Ses deneme, ses
numbers.
1-2, sound check, 1 2 3 4, sound check, ses deneme. Kolay
Uh,
gelsin.
Inflation in the UK has reached record levels, and the record levels have been seen in the past 4 decades. Food and fuel prices have seen remarkable increases. Germany is now going through a huge economic crisis, and inflation levels are running quite high, and record levels have been reached. In Germany, inflation has risen, and the biggest reason for that is the price increases in food. And experts also estimate that German economy is on the brink of recession, just like the States. the US, in addition to UK and Germany. Well, in addition to these countries, crisis is being felt in other countries as well. Our presidential interview is going on with Erisolu. You have the floor. Well, economy is quite a sensitive topic, and since the first day I've known you, although you are left alone in certain matters, you do not give up on your commitments, and most of the time you turn out to be right and correct. When we go back to December 2021, you have announced FX protected lira deposits, and this was one of the moments that you stood by your commitment, and many decisions have been taken since then. For the wheels to run in Turkey, you exert a lot of efforts. Economy, employment growth, yes, this is one thing. But the second part of my question is related with new decisions to come in September. Well, as economy is pushing us so hard, I look at Kayseri and I see that people are still quite enthralled to be meeting with you. As there is such a huge challenge, we have a great level of interest. And how do you associate the two of them?
Well, first of all, the process of pandemic and the war that is going on in Ukraine and the exorbitant price increases in the energy sector and the problems arising out of the supply chain brought along an inflationist global environment. Of course, this didn't only affect Turkey, but all the countries. That's why, as of June, the annual inflation rate reached to the level of 78 to 79%. In order to ease the cost of living and increase the trust to Turkish lira's economic instruments, we have taken every necessary precautions and steps without any delay. This is one of our exit strategies. That's why our Ministry of Finance and Treasury and with our experts in the economy, we are assessing all the possible policies. So, in harmonization and coordination, we are realizing all those steps, and against those challenging conditions, we are trying to increase the economic resilience of our country. The forex protected Turkish lira deposits has been shown great interest by our citizens. A total number of 1.8 million deposit accounts have been opened so far, and this indicates a high level of trust. If you can establish trust and stability, and if you can preserve it, and if your nation, if your people shows trust to yourselves, then no one can destroy or collapse such a country. In order to disseminate the Turkish lira deposits, we will continue to support forex protected Turkish lira deposits. And at the same time, if our citizens would like to make use of their money with the Turkish liras, we are also providing them alternatives. The income indexed bond issues is one of them. And the demand has already disseminated to the base, and it is indeed over our expectations. So 83,816 individual investors have shown a demand by 6.6 billion Turkish liras, and all those regulations will definitely yield good results on the inflation, which we have been closely following. So those regulations really diminished the pace of the inflation rate, and we have also seen reductions in the oil prices, and indirectly we are expecting positive results on the commodity prices. Most probably we will see those results during the fall. And we most probably will see the reductions in the inflation rate as of March and April.
Because waters would think with their stomachs, and despite all these challenges, the precautions that you've taken, you probably see the positive impact of that out on the field.
As you mentioned yourself, the official figures in our Kayseri demonstration was approximately 70,000 people. So, despite this heat and such a hot weather, 70,000 people came to that square and they say to Turkey that this is the way out of this crisis. And beyond that, I am taking a look how our citizens are shopping, so I have to say that the situation looks quite positive. And one of the things that I would like to mention here is the cost inflation. And in terms of the cost of inflation, I do believe that we really managed the process. But the recent increases in the wages and the salaries, there has been a remarkable increase with the money that is going into the pocket of our citizens. And this increases in the salaries, by the way, will be reassessed as of the end of this year. For example, I will pay a visit to Ordu province this weekend. Of course, everyone expects to hear news about the nut prices, and we will announce it. This is our work, of course. Where the tea is harvested, we will announce the increases in the tea prices. Where the wheat is harvested, we are announcing the prices of the wheat. And when the nut is being harvested, we will announce the prices. So without giving permission to the ones who are abusing the prices, we will announce the prices. But of course, when I'm announcing those prices, I will not listen to what Mr. Kemal says or this lady says. So we have this responsibility, and we have to take into consideration the producer price indexes. And as I am announcing those prices and the fees, I will never allow the not producers to be oppressed under the inflation.
Recently, additional indicator adjustment was made, and an interim raise was made in wages. And you said that you will be revising the situation. So, will these kinds of developments be an issue? Well, additional indicator and interim raise in minimum wages, and the you will be making revisions, you said. Are the details of that clear?
Well, Mr. Vedat follows all those matters, all those issues, and as you know, there is a calendar, and our teams and our colleagues have been assessing those matters, and the issue of additional indicator and coefficient, as you know, has been on the agenda for a while. The last regulation was done in 1994. After that date, although there has been certain regulations, unfortunately, a comprehensive one which will cover every degree hasn't been done so far. So as of this year, we have started working on the additional indicator, focusing on the degree of 3604. That's why, as long as you are first degree, all of our teachers and the police officers, if they graduated from undergraduate studies, and all our healthcare workers and the religious officers, their additional indicators have been updated to the level of 3,600. And advocates, legal counselor, and the neighborhood wardens, and at the same time the military experts, all the professions with an additional indicator of 3,600 will be benefiting from the rights arising out of 3,600 additional indicators. By the way, provincial administrators and also the financial income experts and together with inspectors, their additional indicators have been updated from 2,200 to 3,600. So all those steps have been taken by us in order to ease the challenges of our citizens. By the way, for a time of 28 years, the additional indicator system has been slightly touched and changed, but based on the social needs, we have revised this additional indicator system and we have presented it to the discretion of our great parliament. By the way, as of June, we have taken an historical step and we have carried out a regulation which enabled the prevention of procuring tax from the minimum wage. This issue has been spoken and discussed for a while, but we are the ones who realized this regulation coming to fruition, and we have once again shown that we are standing with our workers at all cost.
In this regard, well, to make sure that workers, pensioners aren't crushed under inflation, many steps have been taken. Well, wages have been um, increased, and 30% of wage increase was also made for pensioners, and steps were taken to erase the interest rates accumulating on student loans. And the main opposition somehow claims that they pushed the government to take these steps, like Kılıçdaroğlu mentions. So, did this happen because the opposition pushed you, or were you already taking steps, especially for the student loans?
Mr. Mehmet, remember those times when we have come to office. First of all, the scholarship of the university students, how much it was it? It was only a mere 45 Turkish liras. And the university fees were collected from the university students. Did we abolish the collection of university fees just because of the fact that Mr. Kemal said it? We abolished the collection of university fees. And right now, the university students are receiving 650 Turkish liras as a scholarship. And after the update, the scholarship of the university students most probably will reach to a level of 800 Turkish liras. Regarding to the student loans, as you know, there are three sides of the issue. First of all, if you are receiving a student loan, then you are not supposed to pay it back imminently. First of all, you have to find yourself a job with insurance. And after you find yourself a job, after you graduate, of course, and after you find yourself a job with insurance, of course, then you will start paying it. I mean, it might be a job from the private sector, and after you find yourself a job with insurance, within 2 year time frame, you will start paying your a student loan, and you are not supposed to pay any interest rate, by the way. And this is something that I have announced as I was prime minister back then. So they are saying that the students are supposed to pay back by taking into consideration the inflation, but this is not the case. They are only supposed to pay back the capital only. And we will never allow our students to be abused by the opposition party with such ridiculous attempts.
So you were joking, I guess, on the aircraft. So Kılıçdaroğlu told so and we're doing it, you said, and you're saying that it's not really the case. Well, giant investments are taking place recently. Well, giant investments and giant pieces are coming to the fore, and documentary channel of TRT has prepared something on it. Let's watch it and we'll continue with our questions afterwards. An engineering miracle, construction of bridges at its peak. Turkey's signature for the future. Well, concrete foundations, 87 giant structures, 318-meter towers, and the world's largest suspended bridge. We are pushing imagination in a place where Çanakkale legend was written. A challenging act has been assumed. The city of civilizations, and on the strait of the city, something that runs underneath the sea, and the first submerged bridge of Earth. But how? Well, TRT documentary will make this video available in the days to come. We are continuing with our questions. Hale Kaplan, the floor is yours. We've watched the video. Giant investments have taken place, really. Marmara Highway, Osman Gazi Bridge, Çanakkale Bridge. Well, record uh, numbers have been seen on these bridges, and the opposition has had some criticism, but you've basically responded to them with numbers. What would you like to say on that?
As you know, the opposition parties have always been against the realization of those projects. Let me give you an example. Yavuz Sultan Selim Bridge, as it was under construction, the opposition parties were using the ferries on the sea, and they visited the Rumeli Kaval, and they have made demonstrations back there. But we were committed for those investments, and we have completed those projects. And right now there is a very intense traffic. And the automobiles and also the truck lorries are using that bridge and passing that bridge. And this also shows a very important fact. There are the ones who are touting that we are collapsing economically. So I believe the best answer to those can be given by those trucks and those automobiles which are passing those bridges. So this shows that the economy of this country has not collapsed. Well, everyone has their automobile, so we are proud with this fact. With the truck lorries from the Anatolia to the European continent, the foods are delivered, and the intercity transportation goes on with the buses. So as this goes on, how dare you say that the economy of Turkey has collapsed? Osman Gazi Bridge, likewise, reduced the travel time, because in the past we were using the ferries and it took 45 or 60 minutes, but by making use of this bridge we can pass this area within 5 minutes. And on 4th of July, approximately 43,300 vehicles have used that bridge. So this is really important. Mr. Kemal unfortunately couldn't still learn the BOT model, and he expects from the government to explain him what this BOT, the build, operate and transfer model is. Mr. Kemal, the BOT model is a model in which the state doesn't pay a single penny. The contractors are constructing this bridge, so you are undersigning a contract with the contractor, let's say for 15 years, and the contractor will operate this bridge, and based on the conditions stipulated in the contract, the contractor will operate this bridge, and if the state is supposed to pay some money, then the state will pay it, and the contractor will make business very peacefully, and maybe later on they will be applying for the upcoming projects. The 18th of March bridge has been constructed with an investment amount of 2.5 million euros, billion euros, and the Korea have financed the project, and in consortium with a Turkish company, they have constructed this bridge. So this bridge is unique in its sense with the highest width. In the past, it was a nightmare for us in order to pass from Lapseki region to Gallipoli. We were waiting almost day and night in order to pass that region, but this is not the case anymore. So within only 6 minutes of a time frame, you can pass this district very easily. By the way, this bridge is just like a golden necklace. The ones who are using that bridge is praying for us, and we are very happy to hear that. And this is not the only case. Between Şanlıurfa and Adıyaman provinces, we have Mississippi Bridge. So without our government, people couldn't even have dreamt of such a bridge, but we have constructed this bridge. Likewise, this gentleman, as you know, is an MP from Izmir. In the past, the travel time between Izmir and Istanbul was 6.5 hours, but right now you can easily travel from Izmir to Istanbul within a time frame of 3 hours and 15 minutes. And in addition to the bridges, of course, we have constructed all those tunnels. Think about the Marmara region, the Eurasian Tunnel, think about it. So all those projects are indeed the good signs of economic development and the symbols of civilization, and these are the beauties of indeed world standards investments.
So the guaranteed amount has been exceeded already. We're looking at the number of vehicles that passed it, around 80,000, and that traffic uh, couldn't have been managed with ferries, and great congestion would have happened. But still, the opposition is trying to create certain perception. Would you like to add on that?
Well, I don't think that we have to deal with those perceptions. We should focus on our works. So the opposition parties hold the municipalities of 14 districts, and by trying to increase the prices for water, they are trying to tackle those problems. As the government, from the central budget, we have given an increased amount of budget to those provinces whose municipalities they hold. As our tax income increased, the allocations to those provinces increased as well. As you know, Mr. Tevfik, the mayor of Esenler district have explained all those figures. I mean, how can you say that you are not receiving any money from the central budget? I mean, all those payments have been registered. The money that has been allocated to the Istanbul Metropolitan Municipality has been registered. So,
So a significant increase has been observed, right?
yes, well, you cannot do this. I mean, all those monies which have been allocated for the metropolitan municipalities have been increased by 5 times. All those monies have been allocated to those provinces. But unfortunately, we are not lucky because we don't have a sincere opposition party, and they are not saying the truth. I mean, if they were honest, then they could have progressed even more.
So it used to be a partisan distribution, the allowances.
But we will continue to break more records.
Local automobile talk, I'd like to ask questions about domestic automobile because this is something that is asked quite frequently to us. First, when will we see it on the roads? The second most asked question is about any good news on the pricing and the taxation of that.
Well, if you ask me those questions right away, I don't think that that will be fair because the production process of TOK, the Turkish car, goes on. So we are expecting to launch it as of this year, and hopefully we will enjoy the launch of the Turkish car altogether. The construction of the production facility in Bursa Gemlik, as you know, has been initiated as of July 2020. So with the dyeing facility and the test apron of 1.6 kilometers have been completed already. The 80% of the assembly facility has been completed. In Gemlik, the Gemlik facility is almost ready for the pilot production, and we continue with the chemical infill phase. And in the assembly facility, we have already initiated the commissioning process. And as of the end of this year, the facilities will be ready for the mass production. When the facilities are ready for mass production, hopefully, at the end of last quarter, we will have the first series of our car. Don't ask for the price. Don't ask for the price.
The taxes, any support for taxation for electric car? Well, a point of attraction was introduced already, and there is this matter of batteries.
Hopefully, the production of the battery, the accumulator of the car will be carried out in Turkey. So the electricity cars with a power of 160 kilowatts and will be reduced to the level of 10% of special consumption tax from 60%.
Well, let's move on to politics slowly because there is limited time left till the elections. We can say that it's less than a year at the moment, and this is something that you emphasize in the meetings with your party, and you also emphasize the fact that the coming elections are quite important for Turkey, for People's Alliance and for Nations Alliance. What kind of preparations are awaiting Turkey?
As the Justice and Development Party, we have always assessed every coming election more important than the previous one, so we are not overcome by languor. So we see the 2023 elections more important than the previous elections in which we triumphed. Since we don't have any competitors when it comes to serving to our people, unfortunately we are competing with ourselves only. So we see the 2023 elections as a turning point. So in order to construct and found great and strong Turkey, this election will be an election point. As you know, the elections cannot be compensated later on because not only I or you will lose, but the whole country will lose. If the Justice and Development Party will win the 2023 elections, then the whole Turkey will win the elections. So we have realized the projects of 100 years of a time frame within only 20 years. At the end of the day, Turkey has won and our citizens have won. Let me give you some concrete examples. Even if you look at the airports that have been constructed, you will see the answers. When we have come to office, there were only 26 airports, but right now we have 58 airports. So in a side of Turkey, there are no places without an airport. And when the number of the airports reached to 58, what does this mean actually? It means that within 30 minutes, or let's say maximum 45 minutes, you can go to your home in every city that you visit. As you know, we have last opened Rize Artvin Airport, and the airport has been constructed on sea, and this really is the work of Rize citizens and Artvin citizens. Beforehand, the citizens of Rize was using Trabzon airport, and the airport is magnificent. It's a modern airport.
And great interest. There is great interest in that.
Yes, indeed. In terms of finding the staff and pilots, we have difficulties finding pilots. As you know, the Turkish Airlines are educating new pilots as swiftly as possible. Hopefully, after our pilots have been trained, we will be making use of them. Of course, certain steps will be taken in terms of buying new aircrafts or at least leasing them. But as you know, there are only five airports of its kind which is constructed on the sea level. One of them is Ordu Giresun Airport, and the other one is Rize Artvin Airport. And beyond all of those, when Binali Yıldırım became the Minister of Transportation, the length of the highway was 6,100 kilometers, but right now we have the divided uh, uh, highways of 28,000 kilometers. So, of course, we have highways, divided lines, and such. So this is the point that we have reached so far. And when we take a look to the education sector, we have increased the number of our universities from 76 to 208. And this also means that we have universities in all of our provinces, all 81 of them. So we don't have any province without a university. So in 19 of our cities, as you know, we have the city hospitals. Without the city hospitals, we couldn't have overcome the COVID-19 crisis. If God is willing, the new city hospitals will be opened very soon. One of them will be opened in Ankara. So hopefully within a couple of months we will open them.
Well, People's Alliance has preparations for the elections in 2023, but Nations Alliance has plans too, and six-party bloc meetings are ongoing at the moment, but so far they haven't really agreed on a presidential candidate, and they say they're going to announce their candidate after the calendar is quite clear. Do you think that's a tactic, or do you think they have not reached a consensus at the moment? Do you think they are delaying the announcement a little bit? And HDP, its role in this process, although they're not on the table physically, what is their function? What is their role? HDP's role. What would you like to say about this?
Well, as the People's Alliance, we are responsible for ourselves only. we have no problems whatsoever between our political parties. Our candidate is known and he is ready, and the candidate of the People's Alliance, together with all the alliance, continues its work. As you know, the ones who are working with love will never get tired, and we always repeatedly said that there is no rest for the weary. So with an experience of more than 20 years, we will be standing in front of our people in 2023 elections. It doesn't matter how you define it as the alliance of nation or the alliance of derogatories, it doesn't matter who will be their candidates. We are responsible for ourselves because we know that they have different calculations in the table of six and behind this table of six. So you cannot expect anything good to come out of this alliance.
Would you like to have Mr. Kemal as a rival?
Well, I'm not interested who will be the candidate. We will be focusing on our work. As you know, Mr. Kemal has become a candidate for Istanbul. He couldn't even pronounce the name of the district properly. Rather than saying Kağıthane, he said Kağıttepe. I believe in Ankara he has lost his identity card, so you can easily understand what I mean. So the good deeds should come to fruition without any delay. I mean, I wonder if they could have come with a good deed. I wonder whether they would delay it so much. At the end of the day, what they are trying to accomplish is to divide our country and go with the slander campaign. So they have only one common point. They are easy puppets to be used, to be abused, and they are the advocates of the terrorist organizations. And they are trying to pretend that they are politicians, because at the end of the day, they all advocate the terrorist organizations. And although they are not claiming that they are allying with the HDP, they are advocating it.
Well, there is a party that has been with you as a party of the national perspective, but would you like to share your evaluations about other parties?
Well, I wouldn't like to make such kind of an assessment because at the end of the day, they should first of all comprehend in what kind of a treason they are, because they didn't come to their positions because they deserve it. They have been brought to their positions. If they have been given the position of a prime ministry or any ministry whatsoever, a will, apart from them, has bestowed them with those positions, but they couldn't uh, know the value of those positions. So right now, they are trying their best to come up with something in the negotiation table of six. But at the end of the day, we believe in the wisdom of our nation, and I know that my nation is wise because our nation, my nation, sees who they are, and they will vote accordingly.
Well, in all the provinces you visit, you come together with the youth.
Not only with the youth, but with the workers, with the ladies as well. So, for example, I have come together with the workers of a great factory. 2,000 people were present.
And they also conveyed their demands and problems.
And we have said to their boss, okay, we have given increase in the salaries and the wages, and I have said to their boss that the eyes of the workers are looking at me quite differently, and I requested from the boss to increase the salary of the workers, and the boss of the factory said to me, whatever you have given as an order, I will implement it, he said, and all of a sudden a round of applause was heard. and without any delay, he increased the salaries and the wages of the workers.
But here, your messages for the youth come to the fore for 2023 and for 2053 visions. You convey them to the young people. The projects implemented for them for the past 2 decades. Let's have a look at them.
You
So
are
the
the
young
youth who will enable Turkey to reach to its targets and change Turkey. We have renewed the infrastructure of our country from scratch, and based on the needs of our country, we have opened new sport facilities. As a president who was active in sport during his youth, and as a president who actively does sport, I believe in you and I trust you all. In the past, the modern stadiums with a high capacity belonged to only a couple of provinces, but all those skiing facilities and the modern stadiums have been disseminated all around Anatolia. Of course, like our success stories in other fields, our success stories in the field of sport is no coincidence whatsoever. Every medal that we have won has been due to the endeavor and the challenges that we have overcome.
We're going on with our the interview. As a young journalist, I'd like to give the floor to Kaplan to ask this question. You come together with young people frequently, and what is your impression after your meetings with them, after your gatherings with them? You always emphasize that they're the hope for this country, and what kind of a Turkey do they want?
Well, Miss Hale, first of all, when we have come to office, remember the age for elections and to be elected was 30, and we said that we will reduce that age, and we have opted for a difference for voting and being elected. One of them was 18 and the other one was 25. And then we said that let's make sure that the right to vote and stand for election be 18, and only after then our youngsters have a voice in the parliament. So I have youngsters in the parliament as the MPs of my political party, and they are already serving in the national parliament. This really increases their excitement and my excitement as well. Why? Because the fact that our youngsters are becoming a member of the parliament at such an age, such a young age, really gives such a dynamism to our parliamentary work. The 2053 and the 2071 hopefully will bring along a much more dynamic politics to our country, thanks to the fact that we have young parliamentarians, and their dynamism increases our dynamism as well. So in every city and every place that I do visit, I feel the dynamism of our youngsters, and it really makes me much more different.
There is speculation that young people are opposed to your party.
Well, they can opt for speculations, but as the youth of Technofest, together with our youth of Technofest, we will march forward to our sacred cause. And so hopefully, during the first election, the ones who are accusing us with such things will see why we are standing with our youth. You can see the youth in the videos.
Esteemed President, we'd like to thank you very much for your answers. Esteemed Okan Müderrisoğlu, Hale Kaplan, Mehmet Acet, and Nuriye Çakmakçelik, we'd like to thank them a lot for their contributions. And those who are watching us on TV, we have hosted esteemed President at Çankaya Palace, and this is the end of our program.
How long was it? 1 hour and 45 minutes. So we also would like to thank all our citizens wholeheartedly who watches us in front of their TVs.
Thank you very much again. This is the end of our program. Good evening.